Hey guys, welcome back. So this is gonna be another one of those weeks where I'm just gonna go completely outside my comfort zone and try to tackle a subject that I just don't know too much about. And I'll get more into the why in the reviews themselves, but I just wasn't a big Power Rangers fan back in the 90s. So please be gentle with me because I just don't know a ton about this series, besides the fact that it was just a bunch of teenagers dressed up in tights that all rolled around inside giant robots. And yeah, that is a cool concept, but I just wasn't into them at the time. And regardless of if I was into them or not, that didn't change the fact that we got a metric ton of Power Ranger games on just about every single console back then. And while it would take like a 4-hour long video just to cover all of them, this video's just gonna look at all the Power Ranger games that were released on the Super Nintendo. And before someone yells at me because I know it's coming, yes, I did cover one of these in a previous video, but I've kind of redone it for this one just for completionist's sake. Also, I hate telling people to go back and watch a previous video for the stuff that I'm talking about in this video. Anyway, without further ado, let's just jump into the action with the very first Power Rangers game released on the Super Nintendo. Up first, we've got the very first Power Rangers game released on the Super Nintendo, simply called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This one came out back in 1994, and I'm sure that I'll be burned alive in the comments for this, but I just wasn't the biggest Power Ranger fan back then. But put your pitchforks away, because it wasn't that I thought it was lame or anything like that. It was mainly because I was just kinda getting out of cartoons and toys by the time that Power Rangers came around. I think I was like a sophomore in high school when it finally got mega popular, and I just thought I was far too mature to watch something like Power Rangers. That stuff was kid stuff, or at least so I thought. And that attitude unfortunately carried over to video games as well, since I just kind of figured that anything coming out for the Power Rangers was automatically aimed at kids sitting back in elementary school, not high school kids like me. And even if I just by chance happened to look at the back of the box and saw that this was actually a beat-em-up, which was my favorite game genre at the time, I still don't think that would have swayed me. But I've had more than enough people over the years tell me that this is actually a decent brawler. So let's see if this first outing for the Rangers on the Super Nintendo can do the impossible and make me enjoy a Power Rangers game. Once you start the game up, you can pick from your favorite Power Ranger and then get ready to avenge the millions of people on Earth that Rita Repulsa has apparently just burned to death. You do this by punching your way through putties and a bunch of bosses through a variety of stages all over the city. And if you've ever played a beat-em-up before, then I think you know what you're getting into here. There's not really much here that's gonna blow your mind or anything like that, especially since this is one of those beat-em-ups where you're just running back and forth on a single plane, making an already sparse-feeling game seem downright lonely at times, since there's only like 3 enemies ever on the screen. But one of the cooler things that I think the game does is how every stage has you playing the first half as just your normal character without their Power Ranger gear, with a scaled down set of moves to be more in line with their human selves. And at first I was kind of like, wow, this is weird that the game limits you to what you can do for the first half of every stage, since the human versions of each character essentially only has one attack along with your standard combo. And if the game was just this, then things would get pretty dire really quick, since it's really just kind of boring. But once you get far enough in each stage, then it's Morphin Time, with each character finally becoming much more capable fighters, having better combos that actually use their Power Ranger weapons, more agility to do their patented Power Ranger acrobatics, and really just more fun stuff that you can do with them. You also get a super attack that you can use in any form, which summons the power of that Ranger's Zord to wipe out whatever enemies are on the screen. And overall, the Power Ranger sections are definitely more fun than your non-powered up Ranger sections, which you might imagine. The stages do at least offer a good deal of variety for you to toss Rita Repulsa's finest putty soldiers around in, with some even throwing in some light platforming and other obstacles to get through. There's even a water stage where you have to swim through sections of the stage where the water level's constantly rising and lowering. But overall, the cartoonish look of the game, along with the low number of enemies on screen, kind of makes them all feel a little bit more sparse than you might expect from a Power Rangers game. It's not bad, I just wish there was a bit more action. And the bosses continue that theme, since most of them have some very basic patterns that can be learned in just a few seconds, with you just repeating it all through the rest of an overly long fight. Most doing that annoying thing where they just constantly vanish, making you run after them until you get tired of playing catch me if you can. Also, none of these dudes have health bars, and it takes way too many hits to kill them, so I hope you brought a super attack to at least make it go a little faster. At least they all look really good, and I will admit that no matter what I thought about the Power Rangers, I always at least liked the crazy enemy designs that show had. But while I can live with a bare-bones basic brawler, if there's one thing that actually really let me down about this entire game, it's the Megazord fights. And this was like the one thing that I was actually really excited to see in the game. And unfortunately, it's only 2 stages at the very end of the game, and they are not good. Imagine the stiffest fighting game that you've ever played, and then toss in some bad controls on top of that, and this is what you get. Basically, all you're doing is just button mashing while building up enough of your power meter to unleash a special attack. The more it charges up, then the more powerful attack that you can do as indicated below your power bar, but that's really about it. For being the climactic last battles in the game, this is unfortunately a pretty big letdown. But overall, Power Rangers isn't that bad. It's just very basic, but I did have some fun with it. I mean, I sat here and played the whole game in one sitting, so that has to say something. And if I hadn't been such an ass back then thinking that I was too old to play these games, I would have probably enjoyed myself with this one. It's not an A tier or even a C tier brawler on the system, but it's still a lot of mindless fun. And I think it does a great job of just being a decent Power Rangers game. If all you wanted was a good representation of the show on the Super Nintendo, then I can't see you being too mad at this. The one big complaint I do have with it is that it's just not 2-player co-op, and 2 players would have actually made this a lot more fun. But if you're a Power Rangers fan and somehow just missed out on this first attempt at a Power Rangers game on the Super Nintendo, then I think it's a pretty okay time, even as a single-player game. Let's just hope that the rest of these games are at least as good as this one. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie came out not too long after the first game, back in the summer of 1995, so basically around the same time as when the movie was released. And as for that movie, you guys are gonna have to let me know if it was worth your time or not, since I do remember it coming out and being advertised like crazy, but like most things Power Rangers back then, I just wasn't paying too much attention to.
Welcome to my nightmare.
Obviously, the reviews for it wasn't great, but it's a Power Rangers movie, what do you expect? And it seems like the best things that were said about it was that it felt more like a longer episode of the show, just with higher production values. This was also apparently the first time that there wasn't any old Super Sentai footage used for any of it, since everything here was obviously made just for the movie. But let me know in the comments what you guys thought about it, because I imagine it would have at least been fun to see this thing in theaters at the time.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie.
But if you were excited about the movie, then probably seeing this box for the game on store shelves wasn't doing much to get you hyped up. It's literally just the White Ranger on a black background with the Power Rangers logo. I mean, there had to be a ton more movie assets for him to use for stuff like this, but instead they just tossed Tommy on there and kind of forgot to finish it. And the back of the box doesn't do much better, with a basic description of the movie over here, and then your standard 4 screenshots over here. Except this one's just a pic of the Power Rangers. I feel like this should have been on the front of the box, but whatever. The rest of the shots do at least look pretty decent, and it does look like we get a proper 2-player option this time. So let's see if we can get a fun follow-up to the first game based on the movie. But as soon as you start playing this one, things kind of just feel off about it. It definitely doesn't play anything like the first game besides it being a beat 'em up, and moving your ranger around just doesn't feel as good, and your attacks are just kind of stiff feeling, and not in a good way. This one's still using the single plane approach to its action just like the one before it, but thanks to it finally adding a 2-player option, you actually get 2 planes on a lot of the levels now. Unfortunately though, it's just kinda clunky since you actually have to press a shoulder button for your character to slowly jump back and forth between the planes. And if you even bump into an enemy while you're doing it, then you take damage. And that's actually another problem with this game, since you can only take 5 hits now, and it's super easy to take damage. Plus, there's just tons of cheap hits all over the place, making it way more annoying to play than the first game. And I think maybe this would have been less of a problem if the game just stuck to one single plane of action. But when you add 2, and the enemies are just jumping all over the place, it can be pretty easy to take damage. And it's not like the game gives you a ton of new attacks to use to offset any of that, since you've got even less than you did in the first game. Combo attacks are out the window in this game, with you only getting a slightly more powerful attack if you press up and attack at the same time. But it's so slow on most of the characters that it's not really all that useful. So what you end up with here is a game that's somehow even simpler than the first game, which was already a very basic beat-em-up, while at the same time managing to overcomplicate things with its all-new approach to turning into a Power Ranger. Yes, instead of the first game making you play a small portion of the stage as your normal self and then switching you over to a for-realsies Power Ranger at a certain point, this game instead replaces all of that with a power bar that you'd have to manage. You still start every stage as the non-Ranger version of your character, but this time every single enemy that you take out drops a lightning bolt. Picking it up will actually fill up your power bar a little bit. And if you got just a little bit of power in your bar, you can actually perform your character's special move. And think of these as more like one of those power moves from just about every other beat 'em up that eats up a portion of your health whenever you do it. Doing it in this game, though, eats up a bit of power from that meter, but if you keep just using it for more powerful attacks, then you're never actually going to see your Power Ranger mode. Because to do that, you have to actually let it build up all the way, to the point where it'll start flashing, which then lets you finally change into your Power Ranger form. And honestly, it ain't that much different from your normal mode in this game. But hold on, we're not actually done with this thing yet, because if you let it power up all the way, to the point where it's actually flashing again, then you get access to your Power Ranger's weapon. You know, the weapon that your Ranger used as a regular attack in the first game? Well, now it's a whole damn process to even get to it. And when you do get it, the power bar immediately starts depleting, so you can only use it for a few seconds. And if you're thinking, man, all this kind of sounds like a bit much just to manage what you can and can't do during the game, then at least you're on the same wavelength as I am, because there's so much more this game needed to focus on besides this. And it really sucks, because after playing the first Power Rangers game, I was actually kind of excited to play this one, since the movie here seemed like it was just going to be an improvement over the original, especially with it still being the same developer and having a proper 2-player co-op mode this time. But man, I just don't know what happened here, because this just isn't very fun at all. And to top it off, this game doesn't even have any sort of Megazord fight at all, which just seems crazy to me for a Power Rangers game. Like, that seems like it should be required by law or something. Also, the whole thing apparently has almost nothing to do with the movie that it's based on, besides the characters that are in it, of course. Nothing as far as the plot or the locations from the movie are in here at all. It just kind of seems more like a generic follow-up than something that's actually based on the movie. So overall, I mean, this one's kind of just a bummer. It's crazy to me just how much better the first game is. I was tired of playing this one like 2 stages in. There are some kind of fun stages here and there, and I'm guessing that having a second player around would actually help things a lot. But if you're asking me, then I'd say just stick to the first game for your Power Rangers beat-em-up fix on the Super Nintendo. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers The Fighting Edition makes this one sound about as generic as they come, and turning the Power Rangers into a fighting game back then probably made just about everyone's eyes roll into the back of their head from the sheer exhaustion of it, since it seemed like we were getting assaulted by a new fighting game every single week back then. But at least this Power Rangers game tries something a little bit different, since it completely does away with the individual Power Rangers just to focus on a one-on-one fighting game with Megazords and giant monsters, basically like how every single Power Rangers episode ended. So if you were a kid that just wanted to get all that boring story stuff out of the way so you could watch giant robots and monsters fight, then this should be your jam. As for me though, I can't say I was really looking forward to this one at all. Since, as we just saw in the previous Power Ranger game, the Megazord fighting stages weren't all that good, and I was not wanting any more of those. But if you were in a video store scanning the shelves back in the 90s looking for your favorite Rangers, then the front of this box actually does a really good job of getting your attention with some fantastic Power Rangers art. And even the back of the box, while it's not very exciting in its layout, does have some really good looking screenshots that actually makes the game look, dare I say, competent. But was it worth taking a gamble on this one for some hot one-on-one Zord fighting? Well, let's get into this no-holds-barred slugfest and see for ourselves. Power Rangers The Fighting Edition is about your typical fighting game from the 90s. You get a story mode to play through, a versus mode to beat your friend up in, and that's pretty much it. The story mode lets you select from one of two Megazords, and then you fight your way through a selection of other Megazords along with some of the show's big bad monsters. And as soon as you start fighting, well, color me shocked, because this actually feels like a fighting game. It's responsive, you get a decent selection of special moves, and there's actual depth here. I mean, it's not the deepest fighting game ever, of course, it's really simple, but first impressions is that this is totally an acceptable fighting game. Every character gets a weak punch, a strong punch, and the same goes for your weapon attacks. Your heavy attacks in particular are really satisfying, since they've almost got that samurai showdown feeling of landing a massive blow to your opponent and sending them reeling backwards. Besides your basic attacks, you also get a forward and backwards dash that you can then link into a dash attack, along with a sort of jumping smash attack that everyone can do by pressing up in both the weak and the strong attacks together. Each character also gets a surprising amount of special moves that are all done with basic Street Fighter controller motions. But you really don't need to be too accurate with them at all, since most of the time you'll just do them by accident. Below the life bars, you've got your power bars, and these will actually change color as your character gains or loses strength. The manual really doesn't explain this much at all, but it seems like you need to pull off a special attack right when the bar fills up to make it level up. Whenever you do this 3 times in a row, it then changes into a lightning bolt, which I think is when you need to actually perform your super attack. And I say I think because that's really the only time I was actually able to pull them off. Again, this is yet another instruction manual for a fighting game that really doesn't go out of its way to explain itself very well. But at least it's got a full move list for the characters, which was sadly kinda rare back then. Now, if you're over here expecting crazy combos or aerial assaults, then Power Rangers The Fighting Edition is not the fighting game that you should play. And while it is very basic, there's still a good amount of fun to be had by just button mashing your way through this thing if you want to. And going by what a lot of people said about that Ultraman fighting game that I reviewed, I think this is all kids kinda wanted. It just helps that this game is actually fun to do it in. The hits all have some good impact to them, and it really sells that you're these giant characters wailing on each other. And unlike most of these giant monster fighting games, this one actually moves at a decent pace. Even the graphics look really great in this one. Natsume developed this one too, but compared to their first 2 Power Rangers games, this one just looks leagues better. The characters are all big and chunky, and they all look like great anime renditions of their show counterparts. They don't have a ton of animation or anything like that, which for their size I can kinda understand, but it still has a really good look and style to it. Even the backgrounds are all well drawn, and the cutscenes that are in the game are fun to watch too. And I can't believe that I'm gonna say this, but so far, I think this is my favorite Power Rangers game on the Super Nintendo. This is actually a pretty damn fun little fighting game. I do occasionally look at the reviews that magazines gave these games back in the day just to see how reviewers felt about them back then. And this game was actually pretty badly reviewed, and I'm just not sure why. Maybe it was a combination of both Power Ranger and fighting game fatigue from the time, but I mean, playing it these days, I don't see anything too bad about it at all. Now, I will admit that I did just come off a video where I played both Balls and Shaq Fu, so maybe getting a fighting game that doesn't make me actively despise it is clouding my judgment a little bit here. But just like that first Power Rangers game, I can't deny that I had fun with this. And I could totally see kids back then having a lot of fun with it too if you just rented it for the weekend or something like that. It's simple, but it's fun, and as we'll see in the next game, simple doesn't always equal fun on its own. But for Power Rangers the Fighting Edition, I think it is kind of more phenomenal that I like it as much as I do. Power Rangers Zeo Battle Racers is another interesting take on the Power Rangers in video game form, because instead of a beat 'em up or a fighting game, we get a racing game this time, which is something I really didn't see coming. Because, and I don't know about you, but when I think about the Power Rangers, I don't really think of racing games. But even with my limited Power Ranger knowledge, I do at least know that each iteration of the Super Sentai series kind of changes up the theme a little bit. The original Rangers that we got, of course, had the whole dinosaur thing going on. And now Zeo seems to have a motorcycle thing going for it. So I guess the idea of a Power Rangers kart racer isn't that crazy. And if you happen to be a big Power Rangers Zeo fan, then maybe this sounded like a good time, even if the front of the box ain't doing much of anything to get anyone's attention. Honestly, I didn't know this was even a Power Rangers game until someone pointed it out to me, just because this looks so generic. The back of the box ain't helping things either, with a block of text over here that could literally be describing any kart racer that's ever been made, along with 4 whole screenshots over here to sway your purchasing decision, with only one of them actually showing any gameplay. I mean, it does look like a kart racer, so let's see if Power Rangers Zeo is a hidden kart gem or just never made it to the finish line. Get into the game and of course it's pretty standard stuff. You pick your racer from the 8 characters that's on offer, and then you jump into a few racers to determine the overall winner of the cup. Playing Power Rangers Zeo is about exactly what you'd expect if you've played Mario Kart. In fact, just looking at this might be giving you some serious Mario Kart vibes, since Zeo here is almost a carbon copy of Nintendo's Kart Racer. Almost. The tracks are all Mode 7, with each racer being able to boost and slide around corners, and you can also use your driver's blaster weapon to shoot at anyone that's out in front of you. Where Zeo differs a little bit is in how those blasters work, since you're not just constantly picking up new and weird stuff as you race. Instead, each racer gets 5 missiles at the beginning of each race, and that's all you get. Once you use them up, then there's nothing else besides your racing abilities that's gonna get you an advantage over your opponents. But just racing and the act of getting around these tracks is kinda hit or miss. Basic driving feels decent, with everyone being responsive enough, but the little things like sliding your kart around corners is really hard to get used to. Your drift obviously depends on your speed going into a corner, but the game seems to exaggerate it to the point of it just being uncontrollable a lot of the times. And just when you think you're getting used to it, you end up sliding out of a corner like you were doing 200 miles per hour into it. Each character does at least have their own distinct stats for speed and handling, but no one that I tried really fixed how bad it felt. The track design doesn't help things either. It does start off simple enough, but within a few tracks, the game starts throwing out these crazy winding courses at you non-stop, along with a ton of obstacles that have a bad combination of being both too big and slow you down way too much. Even the stuff that should be fun, like turbo boosts, are usually situated so that they actually send you straight into those obstacles if you hit them. It just makes you feel like you're constantly driving defensively to make it through most of these, which isn't a great thing for any kart racer, even for one as simple as this one. But of course, simple isn't always bad. I mean, just look at the games we've already played. And I think if this game executed on being a fun kart racer for your little brother, then I probably couldn't complain too much about it. But you know me, and I gotta complain about something, and the biggest problem to me in this game is just the relentless AI. The first couple of set of tracks aren't too bad, almost just being too easy. But after that, this game is going to destroy you. You can't make any mistakes because the computer-controlled opponents will just instantly smoke you. And that's when the stuff like the bad track design and those annoying obstacles that slow you down way too much start adding up. You basically have to shoot your shot almost immediately to slow these dudes down. And if you get out in the lead, then you cannot screw up, because as soon as you do, they're all gonna pass you. This game just desperately needed a difficulty rebalance, because I think if it was a little bit more forgiving, then this might be a little bit easier to recommend. As it stands, this is one of the most punishing kart racers that I've ever played. Now there's one thing here that I can't really test out because I'm a friendless old man, but I kind of wish I could have, since it actually seems pretty fun, and that being the two-player modes. You've got your basic versus race and head-to-head races, but then you get neat stuff like a demolition derby where you have to knock the other player off the course. You've also got a point race where both players have to run over objects on the track to get the most points. And finally, a Blaster Master mode, where each player gets a life bar and unlimited blaster ammo. And yeah, all these sound way more fun than just playing against the computer. And after everything I've just said and seeing what you're seeing on your TV screen, you might be thinking to yourself that this was a very early release due to just how basic it all looks and plays. But no, get ready for this. Power Rangers Zeo Battle came out in 1996. Like I said, I wasn't up on my Power Rangers timelines or anything, so I was thinking that maybe this was like a super early thing that happened before we got the Power Rangers that we knew. But no, Zeo's like the next iteration of Power Rangers that came after all that. And for this to be released in 1996, with years of solid kart racers and other racing games on the system, this just feels more like a quick, cheap cash-in for the kids that are still stuck on the Super Nintendo. It's not terrible, but whenever you combine its simplicity with its relentless difficulty, it's just not anything I could see anyone playing unless you maybe had a friend to play those two-player modes with. Even if you're a Power Rangers super fan, I just don't see much here worth getting excited about. And you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but to me, this is the worst Power Rangers released on the Super Nintendo. And I think that's going to do it for me this week, because when we reach the dredges of a mascot kart racer, I think it's time to call it quits. Plus, I need to prepare myself for all the people that's currently running to the comments to correct all the mistakes that I've made about the Power Rangers in this episode. But besides yelling at me, if you want to let me know what was your favorite or least favorite Power Ranger game in the comments, then by all means do so. Also, that like button is always there if you just happen to have some fun watching some of these old Power Ranger games that you might have forgotten about. And feel free to sub to this channel if you want to see some more awkward takes on stuff that I really don't know much about in the future. But that's gonna do it for me this week, guys. Check back next week for some spooky Halloween gaming fun, but until then, thanks for watching.